He is here.
Only one Kenobi? What makes you so sure?
A tremor in the Force.
No more impressions. Let's get on with the review. Let's talk about, it's not a review, is it? It's a discussion. What are we going to have in the 2018 Vintage Collection? I've just done my first video in a long time, the AT-ST driver, and I'd like to just follow it with this one here. They're in no particular order. I just thought that this was one that they could have in it. In fact, in a conversation with Sith Lord 229 about a year ago, I mentioned this guy in conversation, just saying that he is another strong candidate for a figure that they could release. It's a good card back. They've already actually got so many characters from the Return of the Jedi line that they could do without any more, really. But it's a bit biased as well. I'd quite like this one to be released because, well, I had this figure as a kid. This isn't my one from my childhood. This is one I got on eBay. The one I had as a kid is long gone. Broken, played with too much. I was only very young when I had these figures. Lost in the garden, buried, who knows. But anyway, I bought this one and recarded it, and it isn't really that great a figure. A lot of the figures from back then aren't that great. They look great when they're on a card back, but you know, loose, they're a bit rubbish. However, I think the reason I thought about this being a vintage collection figure was because around about the time I was getting into the vintage collection, I got this figure, which is, I think, I apologise if I'm wrong, but this is from the Vintage Saga collection, and it's a great figure. It's a vastly superior figure to that. It's starting to get a little bit of better articulation when this figure was released. Bit of a ball joint on the elbow. Head sculpt is a little bit more accurate. The scaling is good. So immediately I thought, wow, well, you know, they don't have to really do much to change a figure as good as that if they were to ever release him. And I think he is due an upgrade, Madine. He's not been released for a while. Put him on that card back in the 2018 collection. It's possible, isn't it? It's a decent enough figure. I'm not saying they should recard that. I'm just saying that, you know, they could just get hold of the sculpts, however they work. I don't know how Hasbro work in the factory, but it would just look good on a card back. You know, at the end of the day, the vintage collection could have anything in it. I'm a big fan of all of Star Wars. I love the prequels. Obviously, I love the original trilogy more. I love the Clone Wars. Rebels ain't bad. I love the new films they're making. So it's up to them. They could do anything. But, you know, if we're getting figures like this in the vintage collection, which is exact replicas of the card back from the 80s, plus a super articulated, beautifully sculpted figure, then there's tons more figures that they could release. The most important ones I've already talked about, but now I just don't know where next. But this is definitely one that could be on my list. You know, I'd sooner see the likes of Palpatine done, and I'd like to see the Fett I've talked about done, and also the Jawa. There's loads more that I would prefer, but that one I think is a good idea. Why not, eh? What do you think? Let me know. This has been Only One Kenobi. Only One, out.